Alaikum, everyone. Welcome to the Aliyah Day. I am thrilled to be with you, and I pray that you are thrilled to be with me and having a great day, a blessed day, and what have you. It is North Texas, and so therefore today is a nice, beautiful spring day. And then beginning on Friday, we're going to enter into a hard winter. That's the way it is in Texas. We go from spring to winter, sometimes from summer to winter. But in any case, it's going to be cold. We are not going to have our services on Shabbat. The winter weather alert has gotten worse, actually. So now they're forecasting it to be even worse than it was when I talked about this yesterday. So we will most assuredly not have our services on Shabbat. So if you are listening to me and you are in the area locally, just know that we will not be meeting here on Shabbat. That is not going to happen. We will have some type of program on Shabbat. Either me sitting here talking to you like this, or we will have our program like we did about a year or so ago when this happened. And, if we can work out all the technical issues, then we'll do that. But there will be some type of communication, barring any type of electrical, God forbid, outage, which, of course, is possible. That's always the concern when it comes to snow and ice here. As I said yesterday, mostly we have ice. Unlike Kim, who's up there in Hoth, wanted me to take a picture of the snow angel. My snow angel is the Rebbetzin. I'm not going to do a snow angel. I don't know if I could get up. I did a snow angel like that. But anyway, so that is the issue. It is going to be cold out there, campers. And anyway, so yeah, that's what's going to happen. So we will have some type of communication. And it may be me just waxing eloquently to you from like this. I might actually venture. Rebbetzin and I live close to the shul, so making a trek up may be possible for me. But either way, we'll figure it out. We won't leave everybody hanging. But yeah. That's what's going to happen. So today on the Aliyah, we are going to be bespeaking. I'm going to bring forth the topic of the final plague, the 10th plague, the plague of the firstborn, which of course gets us into the discussion of Pesach, which is forthcoming. And so we have lots to say about that, some things to comment upon, things to educate you upon, and enlighten you. And I'm going to wax eloquently about that. But before I do, let me say a Boker Tov, a Guten Tag, Guten Morgen, Bonjour, Buongiorno, Buenos Dias, and whatever else. Top of the morning, everybody. Good morning, Hanani. Hello, Lantern Signals. Hello to you, Donna, Boker Tov, Yitro, and Yochanan and Tirza. Good to see you both. Good morning, Roy. And Clay, Mr. Clay from Helena, Arkansas, Boker Tov. Good morning, Kayla and Rob. Good to see you this morning. Good morning to Chris and Crystal and Clay. Did I say Clay? Good morning, Clay. Good morning, Yonina, who is actually formerly from Georgia. Good to see you this morning. Hello to you, Hepzibah and Chad and Sergio. Speaking of Buenos Dias, good morning, Sergio. Let's see. Good morning to, Jacqueline Boker Tov. Good morning, Makaya. Zetu Matwa Letu. Good morning, Denise. And Shoshana Brenner, Boker Tov to you. Good morning, Louise Spicer. Hey, it's 2:30 a.m. down under. So welcome aboard. Glad you're here. Obviously staying up late. There's Kim. Good morning, Kim. Good morning, Nellie Grace. Keturah, Boker Tov. Jean, yes, good morning. Brenda, Boker Tov. Jubilee, Boker Tov. Sarah and Shane, Boker Tov to you. Gingrich, Boker Tov. Good to see you this morning. Good morning, Leah. Hope you and Shmuel are doing great and staying snugly warm. Good morning, Gianna. They're in North Carolina. There's Shmuel. Top of the morning to you. Good morning, Kathy. And Miriam Boker Tov in, where are you? You're in, I almost said South America. You're not in South America. You were in Nueve Mexico or Nuevo Mexico. Is it Nueve or Nuevo? I always get those two mixed up for some reason. Yamima. Good morning to you, Yamima. Hope you're having a great day, being blessed. Let's see, who else do we have? Thelma, Boker Tov. Makaya, Boker Tov to you. Good morning, Roy. Did I say good morning, Roy? -20 in Iowa. Holy smokes. Your corn comes frozen right off the stalk. It's crazy. It's crazy. Coffee Porch Ponderer, Boker Tov to you. Good to see you this morning. Hope everybody is doing fantastic. Let me begin by this statement here, because just as a public service announcement, in our Torah portion today, we of course get into the discussion of Pesach and the first of the months. And so let me just begin by saying this, and we're going to go right back to the beginning of our parasha. But there is amongst, well, let me just put it this way, just to speak bluntly and forthrightly. The Messianic movement is, well, a mess, right? And so you have within the movement all kinds of messy antics. And so anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is when we come to this time of year, particularly around Pesach, you will start to see on the internet, the worldwide internet, all kinds of people who are coming out of the woodwork, and they are saying that the head of the year, the first of the year, is Nisan. It's not Rosh Hashanah. It's not Tishrei. And they are saying that this is what it says in the book of Exodus. The first of the year is and of course, the only people who say that and the only people who believe that are, of course, not Jewish. And but what I really want to point out about that is, first of all, the head of the year is not Nisan. It is, in fact, Rosh Hashanah, which is the first of Tishrei. However, the head of the months, the time at which we begin counting the months, is Nisan. Not the head of the year, but the head of the months. On the Jewish calendar, the first month and the first of the year do not coincide, unlike the Gentile calendar. In the Gentile calendar, the 1st of January, which is the first month, is also the new year. Okay, fine. But that's not how it works in the Jewish world, in the biblical world. The first of the year is the 7th month on the calendar, which is Tishrei. But more importantly, I wanted to say this is why reading is important. It says in Exodus chapter 12 and verse 1, which is part of our Torah portion today, HaShem, and read this with me. Let's all read this out loud, shall we? HaShem said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this month shall be for you the beginning of months. It shall be for you the first of the months of the year. Did you notice that? So Nisan is supposed to be the first month, the beginning of the month. For you, the first of the months of the year. Didn't say it was the first of the year, did it? It never said that Nisan is to be for you the head of the year. Notice it didn't say that? But it says it shall be for you the beginning of the months. So there you go. And why is this the case? Well, there's an insight in your Chumash you can read later that the reason this is the case is because the Jewish year is based on the month, the cycle of the month cycle. So let's go back to the Keil Tumash now. Let's read our Torah portion from the Keil Tumash, because there is a final plague here, as we talked about, which is the plague of the firstborn. And yeah, by the way, I just looked down and saw Kayla's. Let me put it up here because I don't take advantage of this feature enough. But this is a good thing to say. Kayla says, before coming to Lapid, we were so confused about the feast days because everyone said something different. I realize now it was Hashem's protection, but it was crazy for a while. LOL. That's true, isn't it? Right. So that's what happens when you get into messy antics. Messy antics breeds confusion. This is why halakha is so beautiful. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We simply do, as Jews, what all Jews do all across the world together. You see, being in unity is not doing different things together. That's not unity. Imagine being in a rowboat and everybody's rowing in a different direction. What do you think would happen if you were in a canoe, or let's say some other type of boat, and out on the open ocean with anybody done that before? Anybody been on the open ocean? Not a lake, although that's not that's fine, or a river. I'm talking about the ocean. Anybody? Raise your hand out there if you've been on a small boat, like a rubber raft, let's say, in the middle of the Atlantic. Anybody? Or the middle of Chesapeake Bay, for that matter. Anybody? Raise your hand out there. And in said boat, you had, let's say, 6 people, and you were all rowing in different directions. What do you think would happen? Has anybody been in such a situation? I have. I have been on a small boat, a small Zodiac rubber raft, rubber raider craft, to be specific. And you better be all rowing in the same direction. Let me just put it that way. Because if you are not, that's right, Sergio, you'll be on a 3-hour tour. If you are not rowing in the same direction on a calm day in the middle of the Atlantic, you will find yourself scuba diving without the scuba. So anyway, it's a mess, and it is true. Kayla is right. It's just crazy. But look, here's the beauty of it. Here's the beauty. Let me save you some time and anguish. Just do what Jews do, what we Jews have been doing for thousands of years, and you will be not confused. Isn't that beautiful? You're welcome. All right. So it says the 10th plague, the firstborn. This comes from the Keil Tumash. Just at that moment, when Moses and Aaron were still standing in front of Pharaoh. By the way, I'm reading here kind of the last part of the 3rd Aliyah, getting into the 4th Aliyah, just for those of you who need clarity. Just at that moment, while Moses and Aaron were still standing in front of Pharaoh, God said to Moses, one more plague will I send upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. I will kill every firstborn at exactly midnight of the 15th of Nisan. When do we have the Pesach Seder? On the Jewish calendar, somebody says, when is Pesach this year? The answer is the same as it was last year and every year. When do we have the Pesach Seder? Somebody tell me in the comments, when do we have the Pesach Seder? What is the date on the Hebrew calendar that we have the Pesach Seder? It says, I will kill every firstborn at exactly midnight of the 15th of Nisan. After that, he will send you forth from this place. And when he sends you all forth, he will actually drive you out of here. So when this happens, it's going to be, he's going to make you leave. That's right, Roy. It's the 14th of Nisan. The Pesach Seder occurs on the 14th of Nisan every year. That's right, Hulda, the 14th of Nisan. That's right. So it says, please speak to the people and let them request each man of his friend and every woman from her friend utensils of silver and gold. This way, their forefather Abraham will not be able to accuse me of only fulfilling my promise to enslave his descendants and not promise to enrich them when they leave. Remember, the promise was when we came out of Egypt, we would be wealthy. We would have all the gold and silver. Later, after he left Pharaoh's court, Moses conveyed this instruction to the people, and they carried it out without delay, since they had inspected the Egyptians' homes during the plague of darkness. Remember, during the plague of darkness, we walked around the homes of the Egyptians, and we saw grandma's, silver tea sets and silver flatware, and the gold jars and so forth, and the Levion jewelry, that type of thing. So we gathered all that stuff and we left. They knew where the utensils and valuables were kept. So if they asked for something and the Egyptians denied having it, they could reply that they know exactly where they were. We came here to get grandma's silver tea set. I don't have a grandma. There's no such thing as grandma's tea set. Yes, there is. I don't have it. Yes, you do. It's in the back cupboard. How do you know? Because during the plague of darkness, when you couldn't stand up because it was so dark, I was walking around your house. Nice house, by the way. I'll take the carpet. It says, beside this, God made the Egyptians regard the people favorably. Moreover, by this time, Moshe himself was highly esteemed in Egypt, both by Pharaoh's courtiers and by his people. Now we get into the fourth Aliyah here, where it says, but before all this, while Moses and Aaron were still standing before Pharaoh, Moses turned and said to Pharaoh, this is what God has said. Whereas I smote you with the preceding 9 plagues via emissaries, I am going to administer this final one myself. So it's HaShem who is going to be the one who is going to cause or bring forth himself this final plague. Why? Because as the Haggadah teaches us, HaShem himself is our Redeemer. HaShem himself is the one who rescued us from Pesach, or from Egypt, rather, Mitzrayim. So it goes on to say, the proof of this is that it will occur exactly at midnight. It will not just begin at midnight, but it will take place entirely in the infinitesimal instant that marks the exact midpoint of the night. Only I can strike so precisely, and only I can administer plagues instantaneously. So all the firstborn in Egypt died at the very instant of midnight. From another perspective, God told Moses that this plague was going to occur exactly at midnight, but Moses, afraid that Pharaoh's astrologers would miscalculate when midnight was and thereby impute this inaccuracy to God, he hesitated to announce the plague would occur exactly at midnight. Okay. He therefore said, at about midnight on the 15th of Nisan the next month, I will go forth in the midst of Egypt. Every firstborn in Egypt will die. From the firstborn of Pharaoh sitting on his throne to the firstborn of the maidservant behind the millstone, as well as every firstborn and animal, or as they say in Jamaica, animal. So the plague of the firstborn affects male and female. Okay. The maidservant's firstborn will die because they too mistreated the Israelites and enjoyed seeing them suffer. The firstborn of Egypt's animals will die because the Egyptians worship them as gods. So even the animals' firstborns died. The firstborn dogs, the firstborn kitty-witties, the firstborn Egyptian chipmunk. The firstborn of Egypt's prisoners too will die because they too enjoyed seeing the Israelites suffer. And also so they will not be able to claim that their gods are punishing the Egyptians for incarcerating them. So naturally the question might be, why the firstborn? But you have to understand, especially in antiquity, still today, the firstborn is seen, as the first of power, the first of strength. This is my firstborn. They were also considered, in some cases, they were the heir. They are the progeny. In some cases, they were the priests. They were the almost like second in command. The future. So basically, by killing the firstborn, you're killing the strength, you're killing the future, killing the progeny, killing the priest. It's very devastating. It says there will be a great outcry throughout all Egypt, such as never has been and never will be again. As a result of this outcry, all the dogs in the vicinity of Egypt will get overexcited and start barking ferociously. This will exasperate the Egyptians' terror. But among the Israelites, they will only bark benignly as they do whenever the moon is out. No dog will wet its tongue ferociously against any Israelite person or even any beast belonging to an Israelite. None of our animals will be frightened and run away. So all our cattle will leave with us, as I have said. This is in order that you may know that God is differentiating between the Egyptians and Israel. All these courtiers of yours will then come and prostrate themselves before me and say, leave, you and all your people who follow your counsel. After that, I will leave Egypt with all my people. Having finished speaking, he left Pharaoh's presence indignantly over Pharaoh's warning never to see his face again. God then said to Moshe, Pharaoh will not listen to you in order that my marvels may be multiplied in Egypt. Besides the slaying of the firstborn, there are still more marvels that I will perform even when you leave. So these are the plagues that occurred within Egypt, but then, of course, there were other miracles. And you could argue other plagues that occurred to Egypt even after we left, namely at the Red Sea. Moshe and Aaron had performed all these marvels before Pharaoh, but God made Pharaoh stubborn, so he therefore did not send forth the Israelites from his hand. In recognition of the part Aaron faithfully played in these events, God addressed the following passage, the first official commandment given to the Israelites as the people, to him as well as Moshe. There's an interesting insight and I want to go back to the idea of getting the gold and the silver, because in some cases, and some insights, this is actually not thought to be talking about literal gold and silver, although we did in fact leave with the goods, so to speak. But there's another nuance to this as well. It says, please speak. Rashi quotes Rabbi Yanai in the Talmud, Barakot 9a and b, who explains that HaShem wanted Moshe to make an urgent plea to the Israelites to borrow from the Egyptians, not necessarily for their own benefit, but so that their forefather Abraham would not claim the promise made to him remain unfulfilled. However, continues Rabbi Yonai, the children of Israel were like a desperate prisoner who is told that he will not be released until the following day, but will receive a large sum of money. He replies that he just wants to be let go now and asks for nothing more. The commentators discuss at great length why HaShem insisted that the children of Israel ask their neighbors for vessels of silver and gold. Rabbi Nissim comments that the Israelites resisted the idea of borrowing gold and silver, which they did not intend to return, but HaShem insisted they fulfill this commandment so that the Egyptians would pursue them. That pursuit was necessary so that the Egyptians would follow them into the Red Sea and drown there as a punishment for drowning Jewish children in the waters of the Nile. However, the question remains why Abraham would be so concerned about the Israelites leaving Egypt with riches. Seifis Ames explains that Abraham was known for his activities in bringing converts to the belief in one God. For him, the exile which God had decreed for his descendants represented a most valuable opportunity to obtain souls from among the nations. The great wealth which his offspring were promised could refer only to these spiritual treasures that converts with the children of Israel would bring with them. Rabbi Yaakov Emden uses this concept to explain the words of King David. You, Moses, have ascended on high. You have received gifts from among men. Yes, even the rebellious, now converted, want to dwell near HaShem, who is God, from Psalm 48, 18. So we see here that what the treasures, according to this insight, the treasures were really the converts, the people who were willing to come out of Egypt with Israel and later, of course, become Jews. These are the treasures. These are the real treasures that we have taken from Egypt. And so in our situation and here in this time, that's what we are gathering from the Egypt around us. It's why we do what we do. It's why we are who we are. The reason that I sit behind this microphone on a daily basis, and the reason that this ministry even exists at all, really is because we're trying to collect the holy sparks, trying to bring forth the treasures out of this proverbial Mitzrayim, enlighten people to who to the true faith. Let's put it that way: the true religion uh, of Messiah Yeshua. That's how, and many of you have heard me talk about this about myself over the decades. Um, eh, that's how this whole movement began. It began from me a couple of decades ago, beginning to wonder, um, you know, who is the real Messiah? Because what was his real faith? What was his real religion? What did he live on a daily basis? It certainly wasn't Catholicism. It wasn't Protestantism, that's for sure. Um, it was obviously Judaism. And so here we are. So another insight here, and this is coming from Rabbi Monk's commentary. It says, Ish me'etz re'u, each man of his fellow. Since the giving of the Torah, he writes, the term rea, fellow, applies only to the Jewish people and refers specifically to the fraternal friendship among our people. However, prior to this, when the divine law had not yet been rejected by the idol worshippers of the world, this term included all races. Now, in Judaism, we respect all people. We are to provide justice for everyone, and not to oppress anyone. There are people who have spread lies about Jews and Judaism, and they say things such as, the Talmud teaches that a Jew can lie to a Gentile. The Talmud says that a Jew can kill a Gentile with impunity. The Talmud says that a Jew can defraud a Gentile and so forth. None of that is true. Literally, none of that is true. It's completely false. And those passages, if you've read my article about this on the what am I trying to say? The blog that I created, you'll see that 9 times out of 10, those passages don't even exist. They're just completely made up. They literally are fabricated. The fact of the matter is that, that the opposite is true. In fact, Judaism teaches that more than anything, we need to treat the non-Jew properly and with respect and judiciously, if for no other reason than we are uplifting and showing them that the name of HaShem is holy. Okay, in other words, to treat or to mistreat a non-Jew would actually be a chilul Hashem, a desecration of the name of God. Having said that, when we talk about our brothers, we're talking here about Jews, okay? Because brothers, by nature, have to be in the same family, okay? That's right, Roy. We don't go around beheading people. And if you don't accept our religion, then we don't kill you. We just say, okay, that's fine. I mean, in fact, in a lot of Jewish communities, they want to just be left alone. They just want and a lot of Jewish thought, just as an aside here, and a lot of Jewish thought, they don't really care what the Gentiles do. And then I don't say that in a derogatory or nefarious sense when I say they don't care. It's just that they can do whatever they want to do. They can be whatever they want to be. They can worship whatever religion or whatever God or whatever they want to worship. For a lot of Jewish people, they just want to be left alone, you see. So far cry from forcing someone into a faith system or whatever. I'm going to post here in the live chat that article in case you have come across. There we go. That should work. In case you've ever come across these posts that you might see on social media whereby people say, "Oh, the Talmud says this horrid thing or that horrid thing. The Talmud says it's okay to be a pedophile or whatever." You should know that all of that literally, very literally, is nothing more than rehashed Nazi propaganda. When I say Nazi propaganda, what I mean is literally Nazi propaganda. Like I didn't just say it's Nazi-like. It literally came in large part from Nazi Germany, and it's just all made up nonsense and totally bogus. But I have the article. You can look at it and educate yourself. And as I said, a lot of those passages don't even exist. Like they're just made up. It's phony baloney. But of course, it's intended to target. Propaganda works best on those who are ill-informed. Let's just put it that way. And that's who it targets. Okay. To the point about what I was just talking with respect to brotherhood. Let me just read this insight here from Rabbeinu Bachya, which is interesting. It says, we may find the expression reu, both talking about fellows, both in the masculine and the feminine form as peculiar when applied to Egyptians who could hardly be described as equals to the Israelites, so that this definition would not apply. We have to answer that prior to the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, all human beings were treated as equal before the law, hence the expression rea, fellow human being, was in fact appropriate. Ever since the giving of the Torah, Gentiles are not again referred to by that description. Seeing that God had offered the Torah to the Gentile nations and they refused it, they no longer qualified as equals. Now, this is interesting because there's a lot of non-Jewish people who bristle at the idea of the Jewish people being the chosen people. And being chosen does not mean special in the sense of how it's understood in the non-Jewish mind. If you're chosen in the non-Jewish mind, it's like you're elevated, you're better, you're superior. That's not what chosenness means. In the Jewish mind, which of course is the biblical mind, chosenness means responsibility. It means mission. It means duty. It means a calling. What's ironic and unfortunate is that all the Gentile nations who are so jealous of the Jewish people, which is really the root of the root of a lot of anti-Semitism is just that, jealousy. They're jealous because we're chosen. A lot of Jews, by the way, don't want to be chosen because I just said it has to do with responsibility and what have you. But putting that aside, the point I'm trying to make here is a lot of the Gentiles all had the chance to be chosen as well. But in order to be chosen, you have to accept the law. And most people want to be lawless. It's kind of like people who say, I hate the police, I want to defund the police, but yet the very moment that somebody tries to break in their house or they feel threatened or they're in a car accident, who's the first people they call? The police. So it's kind of like, I want all of the benefits, but none of the responsibilities. This is something we talk about constantly at Lapid Judaism, because this is the mindset of a lot of people. They want all of the benefits and none of the responsibilities. And that is fantasy. That's why I said yesterday, I waxed eloquently yesterday, talking about the importance of living in reality. Because reality is the opposite of what I just said. I want all the benefits and none of the responsibility. That is fantasy. reality means that you have benefits, yes, and because you've accepted responsibility. It's kind of like when you go to work, you have a job. Let's say you work for a company. There are benefits related to the company, the chief of which is a paycheck. But then there's other benefits like maybe, you know, insurance plans, discounts, other fringe benefits, tickets to the game, whatever. You get those benefits because you have responsible to the company to be a good employee. No one is going to give you a salary and give you fringe benefits and you can sit at home, unless of course you work for the United States government. Although that's not the case anymore, but it had been for the last 4 years. But anyway, it goes on to say here, henceforth Jews were described as brothers and companions of God, as we know from Psalm 122:8, for the sake of my brothers and friends, I pray for your well-being. Our sages in Bava Kama explain the phrase, as your brothers, not only, but not to a Gentile. In other words, a Jew does not have to go out of his way to restore lost property to a Gentile, seeing he is not his brother anymore. The same law applies to the prohibition of charging or paying interest to others. While the Torah forbids this inasmuch as it writes, you must not charge interest to your brother, this is to exclude that of Gentiles who are not recognized as our brother. Now, that is the letter of the law. Of course, naturally, we return property to anybody, and that's considered a mitzvah. And that's an example of going beyond the letter of the law. Okay. Now, in our portion here, we've talked about the death of the firstborn that's coming upon the children of Egypt. And we also explained why this is happening. It said in our commentary as we were going through it that because the Egyptians took pleasure in the suffering of Israel. We also see this, by the way, kind of a microcosm of this in the Purim story, that Vashti was vanquished. Vashti was vanquished. I feel like when I say that, I should be in Transylvania. Vashti was vanquished. 1, 2, 3 poems. Anyway, she was vanquished because she, basically caused the Jewish handmaids to suffer. That was one of the commentaries that's brought down. Now we get into chapter 12, and we have the discussion of the Pesach offering. Now, it says here in chapter 12 and verse 1, on the 1st of Nisan at sunset, when the moon becomes visible, God said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt outside the idol-filled city after showing them the new moon. Now, we mentioned that the Pesach Seder occurs on the 14th of Nisan. Of course, it occurs when the sun sets. So, in a technical sense, at that juncture, it's now getting into the 15th of Nisan, but in any case, it's the evening of the 14th. The day of Pesach itself is the 15th of Nisan. The week of Pesach, there are actually 3 festivals that occur within that same week: Passover, first fruits, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The Feast of Unleavened Bread, Hag HaMatzot, is the entire week. Pesach, by the way, I should say, we colloquially refer to the entire week as Pesach, okay? But on a technical sense, Pesach is the 15th of Nisan. The Feast of First Fruits, whereby we begin to count the Omer, is the 16th of Nisan. And the entire week is Pesach, or the Feast of Unleavened Bread, I should say. My apologies. So let me go through that again because I kind of messed it up. The 15th, so we have the Seder on the 14th. The 15th is Pesach. The 16th is the Feast of First Fruits. And the entire week, okay? The entire week, the 7-day period, is Hag HaMatzot, the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The first day, the 15th, and the last day is a Yom Tov. Okay? So with me so far? These are days that are, of course, set apart. We have the Seder on the 14th, and on the evening of the 15th, okay, we begin to count the Omer. Well, I'll go over for all those of you who are new and you're wanting to go through the conversion program. I will go over all of this again in our conversion classes, and you'll be able to take notes and all that kind of stuff and understand that. So what I was going to say is that because, let me just put it this way. Traditionally in the Jewish world, Pesach is a long night. Okay? Because we don't even light the candles, or we don't even start the meal, rather. We light the candles prior to nightfall. But we don't even start the Seder until the sun has set. Okay? And the Pesach Seder is, the Haggadah, going through the Haggadah is a process. And so we're supposed to finish the meal by midnight. But it's a long night. Manishtana, why is this night different than all other nights? I say that because I want to, I guess, for those of you who are new, particularly, kind of prepare you mentally and emotionally. When you go to a Pesach Seder, this is not an hour or 2 hour dinner affair and you get to, oh, that was cute. This is not church. Okay? You're going to come and it's going to be an hours long event. It's like that in any Jewish home and every Jewish home. And it's been like that for generations, and it's on purpose. Okay? That's a good question. Just popped up here. Let me put that on the screen. Let me get my thing right so I can do it properly. In the conversion class, is it required to line up with your theology of denying Paul? I don't necessarily agree with some points, respectfully. I understand that. Yes, you cannot go through conversion and still accept Paul, because he was, in fact, a heretic, and his theology is antithetical to Torah. We've proven this time and time again. I do appreciate the fact, however, that whoever this is, I'm not sure what your name is, but I do appreciate the fact that you have not yet come to that understanding. I respect that, and I understand it, because in the Christian world that you come from, you have been mentally conditioned to believe that Paul is basically everything. His letters really are the Bible, really, and they really, to a large, if you really think about it. Now, you may not use as I say this, you might say, I don't believe that, and I respect that answer. But if you really think about it subconsciously, Paul trumps the Bible. Paul trumps the teachings of the Messiah, and so to hear him be a heretic that takes a minute to sink in. I do understand that completely. But to answer your question forthrightly, yes, absolutely is required. 100. In fact, we have now a new document that I will be presenting related to that very fact. But yes, it is. But listen, I understand it takes time to get there, and it's understandable, 100%. What I just said about him being a heretic is not up for debate. That is, in fact, a fact. When I say that respectfully, and I also do completely get the yikes effect of that. So we're willing to walk with you through that and help you with that as best we can. So thank you for asking. So it goes on to say, this stage of the moon's monthly renewal will be a signal of the beginning of every new month. So this is teaching us that the new moon, the head of the month, will begin by the crescent. Okay. Now, it will soon be time, as it says, for me to. This is coming from the Kale Tumash here. It will soon be time for me to fulfill my promise to Abraham. to redeem his progeny from slavery. But since they have neglected fulfilling my commandments for so long, they lack sufficient merit to warrant this. Now, keep in mind, as I just said, in Egypt, the Jewish people had become idolaters. We had, embraced the culture, the religious culture of Egypt. And as a result, we didn't merit salvation. We didn't merit to receive the Exodus. Okay. It was all really based on the promise that HaShem had made to Abraham. Okay. Which the person just asked about Paul. This is a great opportunity to mention that Paul lied to you in Galatians 3. In Galatians 3, Paul made a statement in which he said that there was a covenant with Abraham that predates the covenant at Mount Sinai. Paul said the covenant at Mount Sinai was given through the administration of angels, which means that it was limited and was not eternal. Was the point he was making, whereby the covenant that God made with Abraham was made between God and Abraham, God personally to Abraham, and therefore was irrevocable and eternal. That was a complete lie. There was never a separate covenant that God had made with Abraham, and it was certainly not a covenant of faith. That's all phony, baloney, plasma, and a good time, rock and roll. And moreover, the covenant that God made with Abraham was directly connected to the covenant of Mount Sinai because there's only one covenant. And in fact, here the scriptures teach us that the Exodus from Egypt happened precisely because of the covenant that God made with Abraham. So the covenants are connected. Okay. So it says here, just one final thing. We just got a couple minutes left here. The Keotumash brings this thought down. Since idolatry is the negation of the entire Torah, okay, by forswearing idolatry, they will in effect be fulfilling all the passive commandments of the Torah. In order for them to acquire the merit of fulfilling active commandments, let all the males who have not yet done so be circumcised on the night of the 14th before eating the Pesach sacrifice. You see, you cannot partake of the Pesach sacrifice unless you're circumcised. And to be circumcised is to be a Jew. So the question was asked, why do you think conversion is even necessary? Because you could not partake of the Passover lamb unless you were circumcised. See, that's what people are not taught. You could not go into the home. If you went into the home with the blood on the doorpost, it would do you no good unless you were circumcised and ate of the Passover lamb. See, everything was required. No uncircumcised Gentile can eat of the Passover lamb, period. This is a scriptural thing. So here, it says here, you have to be circumcised. Since circumcision, why? Since circumcision is the sign of the covenant between Abraham's progeny and me. You see, Abraham's covenant that God had given him, which is also the covenant of Torah, Genesis 26:5, is the covenant of circumcision. So you say, well, I want to be part of Abraham's covenant, but I want to be uncircumcised. It doesn't work that way. I want to be a Marine, but I don't want to join the Marines. I want to be a sailor, but I don't want to join the Navy. I want to be an American, but I don't want to accept American citizenship. It doesn't work that way. You can't be a member of Abraham's covenant and be uncircumcised because Abraham wasn't uncircumcised and neither was anybody in his covenant. This commandment, in effect, embodies all the Torah's active commandments. That is the sign of the covenant, or the sign of circumcision, rather. The sign of circumcision, is from God. That's right. 2 Peter is a forgery, and Peter did not write 2 Peter. everybody knew that, by the way. In fact, before I conclude here, let me share this article with you because I have written an article about this. It's a historical fact that Peter did not write Second Peter, and therefore Peter did not affirm Paul. That is, in fact, a fact. Let me put that here, right here. Speaking of Paul, because somebody brought it up, let me, as I leave you today, and we just talked about the importance of circumcision. Let me explain to you one of the most absurd and ridiculously stupid, pardon me for that expression, comments that Paul ever made. Paul said that circumcision doesn't matter and uncircumcision doesn't matter. What matters is following the commandments. The problem with that statement, the reason it's so absurd, is because circumcision is a commandment. So if you say that circumcision doesn't matter and uncircumcision doesn't matter, the only thing that matters is keeping the commandments, that's a nonsensical statement, since circumcision is a commandment. Another thing that he said in the book of Romans, chapter 2, is that if a Gentile who's not circumcised keeps the commandments, won't you say, and won't you agree that he is in fact he's actually keeping the commandments, whereas somebody who's circumcised doesn't, or whatever? The answer is no, I wouldn't say that. Why? Because circumcision is a commandment. So therefore, if you're uncircumcised, you can't say that you're keeping the commandments because circumcision is a commandment. See, the logic is not hard. The reason that that kind of stuff sounds smart to people is because, with respect, you don't know what you don't know. A lot of Christians don't know that circumcision was a commandment of God. It all goes back to mental conditioning. But listen, as I said earlier, for those of you who are listening, and I understand. I empathize with you. I totally empathize with you. I get it. I used to be a Christian pastor about 20 years ago. Went to Bible college. I know. I get it. So thank God I'm none of that anymore. Anyway, God bless you. End of our Aliyah today. Thank you so much for being here. We went over our time. Please be sure and subscribe to our channel if you've not yet done so. Like this video, share it with all of your friends, and leave me a comment on the end after this is posted, I should say. Let me know what your thoughts are. I would love to hear, your insights. It's always helpful, always intriguing. Otherwise, I will look forward to seeing you soon tomorrow, Baruch HaShem. Until then, have a great, amazing, and wonderful day. And may today be for you a day of good news. Shalom Aleichem.